Good morning from Team Digital Current in Phoenix. We are about to get started. We're just going to give the latecomers another minute. All right, it is 11:03. So I want to say good morning to everybody. Hi, my name is Chris. Today I get to fulfill my lifelong dream of being Sally Jesse Raphael, which dates me. But when I'm not giving webinars, my actual gig is Director of Marketing at Digital Current. We are a Phoenix SEO agency. We've been in business for 17 years, and we love educating other people about how to rock your digital marketing. So today, the theme of our webinar is CRO versus SEO. And what we're going to do is we've got a panel of super duper awesome experts here. I've got my buddies Brian and Brandon and Evan. Evan's going to help us out as the moderator today. If you have questions, please drop them in the chat window, which should be on the right here of Webinar Ninja. Evan's going to flag us down and stop us. If you've got a question that's pertinent, please leave it. We will definitely get back to you, and we want to answer all of your questions. The first thing we want to do, though, is we want to tell you who the heck we are and what you're going to learn today. So without further ado, I'm going to open up my slides. So that's us looking professional there. My name's Chris. I'm the digital marketing director here at Digital Current, and my whole job is to drive leads. I've been in marketing for 16 years, and I have taken a semi-non-traditional path to the point I'm at today. I started out my career in creative services. I was actually a video producer first, and then I started doing some SEO copywriting, and then I wound my way into PPC management, and that's how I got here today. So I'm a huge nerd, and I can't wait to talk about data and creative and how CRO and SEO work in a digital strategy, and how to help you lead your team or work with your agency to get better results for both. So to help me with that, I've got my buddies, Brian and Brandon. Brian, tell everybody who you are. Tell them what you do, what your professional passion is, and then throw in the name of your first pet.
Okay, sure thing. Hey people, I'm Brian. I'm official conversion rate optimization guy. So everything from the quantitative A/B testing and website analytics parsing to the more touchy-feely customer development interviews, polls, and surveys stuff. And I'd have to say my passion falls into uniting the two, especially with teams that struggle to get any value or know how to dive into the touchy-feely stuff, because it matters. My first pet was a Pomeranian. His name was AT, which stands for Attack Track. If anyone is old enough to remember He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, that was basically He-Man's SUV. I was 6. I have a dog now. His name is RoboCop, just to show you how I've matured and grown as a person over the years.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, Brandon, tell us about you.
Yeah, hey everybody. My name's Brendan Listiglu. I'm the SEO manager here at Digital Current. One quick fun fact, the other guy over there, Evan Miller, is my little brother. So any problems, make sure to take them out on him. We help all of our clients to show up at Google and to get all of those interested customers to their website. Been doing this for about a decade now, and started off actually creating content for Bleacher Report and covering teams like the Detroit Lions. So I know plenty of things about what doesn't work, and I'm here to help you with that.
Yeah, and Evan, say hi. Tell the folks what you do when you're not moderating webinars.
So when I'm not moderating webinars, I'm also helping Brendan with our client showing up in Google. And he actually helped me get my start here at this company and in SEO. And I've been working here for 2 years now, almost 3.
And we love you. Together, the 4 of us are just a small part of Digital Current. As a larger team, we handle not just conversion rate optimization and search engine optimization. We also do content marketing and link building. Fun fact about us, we've been in business since 2003. And if you're thinking 2003, and you were alive then, and out in the working world, you'll remember that the internet wasn't as big in 2003 as it is now. But we were alive and kicking then, and we are actually really proud to be founders and innovators in SEO and specifically the link building industry. So we are jazzed today to share, our processes and some of the facts that we've learned and developed over the past 17 years. So let's get started. Here is a little bit about you. We just told you who we are. You are a marketer, and we made this webinar for you. If you're somebody who's juggling maybe a CRO and an SEO agency, or an agency that does both, we're going to give you some tips to help give better feedback to your agencies and make sure that they're spending their time and your precious money working on the optimizations that really level up to your business goals. This webinar is also for you if you got some issues. You're making gains in your traffic or your website conversion rates, but not necessarily both. This webinar is for you if you are looking for a data-driven strategy for testing and optimizing your site. We're going to talk about some best practices for that. If you are not hitting your sales, MQL, SQL goals, this webinar is totally for you. Everything we're going to talk about today is relevant. And lastly, if your organic traffic sucks and you've got competitors who are outranking you, you are really going to want to know some of these tactics and how they can influence your strategy and how to make them work better together. So here's what's on deck in the rest of our presentation. First, we're going to start by talking high level. What are the goals of CRO and what are the goals of SEO? And our experts here, Brian and Brandon, are going to take you through those. We're going to go through then a series of examples. We're going to show you where all of the common conflicts are between SEO and CRO. That's not to say that they always conflict all the time, but the longer you hang out in marketing and the more data you have to deal with, the more complicated it gets to decide how to prioritize CRO and SEO. So we're going to show you how to identify and watch out for those conflicts and show you what's at stake. And then finally, we're going to give you some tools. We're going to recommend our best tools for CRO, SEO, and for marketing reporting and leadership in general that are going to help you figure out what to do if, in fact, you do have conflicts between CRO and SEO that are hurting your site in some way. So without further ado, let's talk goals. Brandon, tell us all about SEO and the whole point of it.
Yeah, the whole point is to make sure that your website shows up in Google when the people you want to talk to type in things that you do or things that you talk about. We try to make sure that all of your content is not only written well and wants to try to and make sure that we're not having just those small technical errors, but also is supported by keyword research, and we know that people are looking for solution A, well, then we're going to write everything about solution A and everything around solution A, so that no matter how they search it, they find you. So once they get there, that's where Brian takes over. That's no longer my problem.
Let's talk about that last bullet point there. Y'all, Brandon is who I go to on my team when I need technical SEO expertise. I'm not actually an expert in that. I consider myself an expert in marketing. And I really need Brandon to steer me straight when it comes to SEO and my organic traffic. Let's talk about the compounding ROI that we say you're going to get from SEO. How does that work? What does that mean?
So one of the best parts about SEO is that there is that keyword research, and that everybody speaks just a little bit differently, whether it's here or it could be a different state, it could be a different country. So there's always different ways to get in front of those target audiences. So as you're creating content over here, you notice that people are still searching for something that's different and over there. You can go and write the content that addresses the people that are searching for that other keyword. But because you've written about this type of topic already, you're going to rank higher with your new content, so that it just kind of continuously compounds on each other as you build new stuff. You're going to get more value out of every piece of content that you have already created and those that you are about to create. So it just really helps to level up and keep those people interested in what you're saying.
Yeah. Like an analogy from another one of my team members, Abby, that really relates here is that SEO is like the 8th grade class president race, right? Like the more votes that you get, oh, hey, Cynthia from Phoenix, New York. The more votes that you get in the class president race, the more popular you get. It's the same with Google and developing authority. That's what SEO is all about. Increase your authority, increase your visibility, increase your traffic, and all of those things have a cyclical effect. And the cool, awesome end goal, if you're doing it right, is that over the long term, those can compound on each other. Okay, now let's talk CRO. Did I miss something, Brandon?
No, it's just saying perfect. You said it better than I could.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. And Brian, take it away. Talk about conversion rate optimization on a high level. What are we trying to achieve?
Sure. So we've done all this great work to get more people to the site, and that's really exciting. Real talk, the majority of those people will then leave the site without giving you money. And that's not ideal. And so conversion optimization practice is a data-driven method of trying to change that fact, even if just slightly incrementally. So what can we do? What changes can we make that will increase the proportion of those visitors who actually convert on the site, whether that's making a purchase or signing up for submitting a lead form, signing up for software, etc.
Okay. And let's talk about like what the end goals are that you deliver to a customer. When you do an audit, it's all about action, right? You help customers take the action that the business wants to drive.
Yeah, exactly. There's a ton that can go into it. You might do A/B testing, experimentation. You might dive deep into website analytics and try to parse out how people are using the site, what they're looking for, session recordings, heat maps, customer interviews, polls. So there's all these tools, but every action and every use of one of these tools necessarily has to drive toward an actual recommendation. We should make this change because of these reasons, and here's our plan for measuring the impact of that change. And over time, we expect to see those changes drive up the conversion rate, drive up the number of visitors who are taking action on the site, and revenue itself.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because when you're newer to digital marketing, or when you're starting out in a specialist role, before you're the person who's accountable for strategy and for really being held accountable for revenue goals, you hear A/B testing and you think, okay, I'm going to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. I want to make it really clear to the folks here that CRO is about A/B testing in a really methodical way. We outline tests in a way so that we make sure they make sense. so that we can get good data out of them and actually make actionable decisions. This is not about like just playing around and seeing what happens, right? I mean, this is science, and it's both qualitative and quantitative.
Yeah, the qualitative feeds into the quality of the experiments or changes that you'll make, how informed your guesses are. The quantitative de-risks these changes and gives you a statistical basis for saying, okay, we really believe this is going to work. And as far as the goals, yeah, you can run a test and change button colors and see how many clicks you get, but most likely that click is pretty far upstream from actually making money from the business. And it's questionable whether it's worth your time and attention to bother in the first place. So you really need to have an eye on how your website makes money and run experiments that influence that particular outcome versus all the tons of other mini outcomes that can take place on your site.
Right. Like all things marketing, we've got business goals that we need to hit and that we're going to be held accountable for. And that's the whole point of both CRO and SEO. And I've got a really cool slide here that visualizes what the specific goals of both CRO and SEO are, where they're slightly different in their approach. But the important part is the middle there. It's that the end game of both of these strategies is really the same: increase conversions. Think about the buyer's journey, the actions that people take as they're moving from awareness to consideration to conversion. And all of that is driven by data. We are not supposed to be guessing here. That's not the smartest way to use our marketing budget. All of this is data driven. Ultimately, one team, same goals, which is why when there are conflicts on your team or between a recommendation that your agency gives you and something that your in-house team is trying to suggest, you need to know where the conflict arises from, understand both points of view, how CRO experts and how SEO experts can both approach the same tactic despite wanting to get to that same end goal. So here are our common conflicts: navigation menus, pop-ups, snippets, and page speed. All kinds of issues with copy. There's too much, there's too little. Gated content, A/B testing, internal linking strategy. What you're going to notice about all of these things, if you're a smart marketer, is, hey, wait a minute, these are all things that I do on my website right now. These are all best practices. Why are you calling them conflicts, and shouldn't I be doing these things? Yes. Hold the phone, stop right there. You should absolutely be doing all of these things. The point is just that you may not realize that there could be a way to optimize, say, for instance, your navigation menu in a way that gets you optimal CRO results and optimal SEO results, or let me put it another way, the best CRO that you can get and the best SEO that you can get at the same time. So we're going to start to walk you through some real life examples of how these particular digital marketing best practices can actually conflict sometimes. Okay, so what's this? This is a website. It's the homepage of one of my competitors. The names have been changed to protect the innocent here. I don't want you to identify who they are because we love everybody in the world and we don't want to bash anyone. But this is a really great example of a lead gen website. There's good here, a lot of good, and there's bad here. And we're going to look at this from both a CRO and an SEO perspective. Brian, I want to kick it to you first. As a conversion rate optimization expert, if I were to come to you for an audit and say, hey, Brian, here's my homepage that I'm trying to generate leads with, what would be your immediate feedback to me, your gut check reaction, not having access to any of my analytics? What do you think is good or bad about this page?
Yeah, let's say nice things here. There's a lot of nice things I could say. So from the get-go, we have to remember that the people on the other side of your website or behind the double segmented Google Analytics report you're staring at, these are all human beings and human animals for that matter. So Animals, we're constantly scanning our environment for danger. And this applies even when a web page is loading in your browser. So the first gate you have to pass before you could possibly convert anybody is this kind of am I safe check that goes through in the back of our minds. It's not even conscious, but there's a surprising number of ways to fail this test, right? If your page loads really slowly, people get a little weirded out. If you trigger alarms or warnings in the browser, if you ask for permissions like location and phone or camera and stuff like that, that creeps people out, and they'll be gone before they even have a chance to take in what your site does. So this site passes that test very well. It's perfectly fine. I think one of the other things we scan for is professional design. So we could debate the finer points of this particular homepage layout, but I think we'd all agree that this is a professional design. It's well executed, it's clean. It doesn't look like a scam website. So that's the first box you have to check before you can even dive into any details. The next thing that you have to consider is people are asking the question, okay, is this for me? Am I in the right place? Did I click on the wrong thing? That's an immediate thought as well, as soon as you're out of danger. This site also nails it when it comes to that, right? You got the words digital marketing in big letters right there on their own line. So as a visitor, if I'm looking for anything related to digital marketing, I can immediately process, sweet, I'm in the right place. And that lets me go deeper and further into the site. So the first thing I would say is that you pass the first couple of checks that every site, every page has to pass before you can even get into any kind of subtleties of conversion.
Yeah, I mean, overall, a ton of positive stuff here. Not being able to see how it's performing. Speaking of which, what if I told you guys that this particular web page in this particular industry is it's one of the highest ranking? Isn't that right, Brandon?
Yeah, this certain competitor does a great job in that respect. They make sure that they are at the top of all the SERPs that are related to what they offer.
Yeah. So I brought up this real life example because I said it's an example of conflict. But I just told you that it's ranking really, really well. So where's the conflict? Brandon, where do you think the conflict might be?
I'm not sure. This looks wonderful to me. It's beautiful. Look at all of those keywords just everywhere across, telling you exactly where you're going to go. It's the information architecture is just on point. I know exactly. Google knows exactly what that page is going to be about. It's perfect.
Brandon's hamming it up because from an SEO point of view, this page is bomb. Look at all the keywords that are stuffed into the navigation bar of this homepage. I'm sure they're ranking really, really well for all of those. Those are things they want to be front and center for when people are out there searching Google for e-commerce SEO, competitor geofencing. But now let's talk conflict. This is awesome for SEO to have a navigation bar that looks like this, stuff full of keywords. What's your take, Brian, CRO expert?
Right. So Brandon nailed it. He really served it up to me when he mentioned Google knows just what this is about and just where to find things on this site. It's sort of an important point to underscore. We have different groups of users. One group of users that is very important is Google. We want Google to be able to use our site effectively. We also have all the actual humans that come to the site too, and we eventually want them to decide to take an action. And so this is great for Google, and I would say not so great for humans. Taking it back to feelings, I guess. Imagine that you've landed on this site and it looks reputable to you and it's relevant to your interests. And so you start to explore, and imagine the feeling in your body the moment that you sort of casually mouse over the top navigation and you see this in your face. All of these options, all these menus, it's taken up the whole screen. I personally think I would feel confusion, maybe mild fear, as in, oh, you're going to make me work really hard to figure out what I need to do next. And I don't want to do that. That's a pretty fundamental concept of website usability. Don't make people think. This makes me think. And it just doesn't look like it was made for humans.
Right. And that's the point. On the surface, your website can look really, really good. You can follow design best practices. You can follow SEO best practices to the T, but there could be a conflict. And in order to know if there's a conflict, you're going to see it in your revenue. You're going to see it in your data. So that's just one example of many ways that best practices, despite trying to follow them, you can still dork up. And that's why we really want SEO and CRO to work together. So let's talk through a couple more of those common conflicts that we mentioned between best practices. Brandon, I'm going to kick it to you. These are some pop-ups that I found on the internet. There's one from Yeti up there at the top. There's one from a content marketing blog up there in the right-hand corner. And then the one at the bottom is Search Engine Journal trying to get me to download their ebook. From an SEO's perspective, what are the benefits and drawbacks of pop-ups, and where could the conflict be?
Well, from an SEO perspective, the biggest concern is not usually one you run into and not one you'll see here, but I just want to make sure it's out there, is that any valuable content you might have in there, something that could help that page rank that's in a pop-up, Google's not going to crawl it. It's not going to take that into account. And so while they get better every year at acting more like humans, to kind of throw it back to a point that Brian was just talking about, we want to keep Google happy. Google also doesn't give you money. So there's probably that to take into consideration. But the other concern is that it can cause some page load speed issues, which is a ranking factor for SEO. And additionally, you can be penalized, particularly if the pop-up is intrusive on a mobile screen. If I cannot easily get out of it, then Google will likely downgrade that page when it comes to their rankings.
Right. Very important point to point out for the marketers like me. We love our pop-ups. We want to capture people's emails addresses. We want to advertise our offers. But you got to check with your SEO team and make sure that you're doing them right. Brian, what's your take on pop-ups, how to do them the right way from a CRO perspective?
So you really need SEO to keep you honest here, because the CRO guy over here, I'm going to tell you, I want all the pop-ups. I want pop-ups on my pop-ups. They're great. They work. I hate them just like you hate them. And at the same time, it's really hard to say no to any sort of UX element that increases conversions. And they're really easy to implement. There are lots of tools that can put a pop-up on your site in minutes. And they're really easy to measure if you want to split test and know the exact impact. I think it's probably safe to assume that all three examples that we see on the screen here, these have been tested into and optimized, that it's great for that. And they almost always do increase conversions. So the tendency from a CRO standpoint will be to push you right up to the edge of your comfort, I guess. And this becomes almost a company culture type of point. For example, no, I don't want to get your awesome content, right? That may be the only way to close that pop-up. I hate it, but it probably increases conversions marginally over having a little Xbox. So what are you going to do? Where do you draw the line? I guess from a UX perspective, and then from an SEO perspective too. How many pop-ups, how many pages, how many pop-ups do you want to force on your customers? But they're so effective. So you kind of got to try them.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, you mentioned the creative here. You mentioned that copy and how it affects your brand image. And I think that's an important one for the marketers who are really strong on the creative side. And you're very concerned about how your brand is perceived by your customers. You're trying to create brand loyalty. You want to create all the emotions and the feels with your customers. Think really hard about what you're doing with these pop-ups. I picked on Yeti a little bit here because it's a clean pop-up. I like, from a CRO perspective, it looks really good to me. The options are limited. It's beautiful. I would say it's on brand. Yeti sells outdoor products, really expensive outdoor products, by the way, water bottles, water coolers, all that jazz, in case you don't know. It's a great pop-up by a lot of accounts, but I freaking hate it. Read the copy. Yeti, would you like to verify free shipping to your destination? Yes, no. I don't really care. Free shipping is nice. I just think the writing is a little bit awkward. My beef from a creative perspective with that, the white one, is I don't remember anymore what website I was on. That is actually an exit intent pop-up. The Yeti pop-up there is one that popped up when I first visited their ecom website. That one with all the envelopes on it with the white background. I don't even remember what site I was on, and I think that's a bad thing because, while it's really clear there and there's one call to action, and it's probably not bogging down their page speed, or at least I couldn't know it without having some other data. I I don't know who the heck you are. That's the most generic image I've ever seen. No, I don't want your awesome content. I don't remember you. Goodbye. Like for me, I think there's probably creative decisions that could make that one stronger. Okay, so I mean, like obviously, we've talked about these pop-ups from 3 different points of view. You can see where there could be conflict on your team. So be smart about using your pop-ups. Let's move on to talking about snippets. Brandon, tell us all about snippets and why you love them and why you hate them.
I say they're the bane of my existence as an SEO, but they have, I understand there's probably some benefit somewhere. But from an SEO perspective, that one of the really technical tasks that everybody has to tackle at some point is page speed. You want to make sure that you are faster than your competitors in particular so that you can rank higher for whatever particular keywords. And while those tracking pixels and tags and all of that good stuff have purpose, they really slow down a page, because what happens is every time one of those gets triggered, it has to send a signal to a different server. And now you've got those servers trying to talk to each other while your page is still loading. As your beautiful stats there point out, this can have a dramatic impact on page speed, which can ultimately affect your SEO rankings.
Okay, you're talking technical stuff, and that's what I rely on you for on my team. But let's back it up a notch for people who aren't so technical. Explain what a snippet is. Explain like I'm 5.
So as far as if you have, let's say you want to know, threw me off a little bit. I wasn't ready for that particular question, I guess.
My point is just that there's a lot of snippets, different types of trackers, different purposes for these things. What is this?
So if you wanted to make sure to engage with an audience later, or you want to see what they're doing on your website via Hotjar, I was trying to think of a specific one without getting too crazy in the weeds. But if you are trying to use Hotjar, like Brian probably would, he wants to see what these people are doing on the website for some reason, it's going to create a drag on the page loading itself. So while it's great, it's going to collect data from the people that are interacting with the page. It's going to make it more difficult. You're taking resources away from the server to be able to load that page up nice and quickly.
Right. Okay. I think that's very helpful for those of us who are not quite so technical. Brian, tell us about snippets and how you use them in CRO.
Yeah, so I'm the enemy here. I want all the snippets. I want Hotjar or something similar so that we can measure mouse movements and turn those into session recordings and make heat maps and scroll maps so we know about how people are interacting with a page at a time. And I want, of course, Google Analytics, but not just Google Analytics. I want some custom events firing back to Google Analytics based on interactions that I think might be correlated with conversion. I'll crunch those later. I want Clearbit so we can ping somebody's server and database and get back firmographic data based on people that are coming from a business's IP address, so we can see if there's any sort of ABM insights to be derived from that. I'm not even halfway done. What else? So I want Google Optimize so that we can actually literally change the website out from underneath the visitor before it even finishes showing up on their screen. So that's probably the guiltiest party of all of these tools as far as delaying the page load time. I want all that stuff because you never know what's going to produce the insight that really moves you forward. And so having as much as possible in a perfect world for me is the preference, I guess. So we do have to strike a balance.
Exactly. Okay. Speaking of balance, another place that we have got to do that is in copy. Well, I'm trying to make this video load here, and I think it might not work for us. So sorry, y'all. But let's talk about copy for a second. What are the issues that could arise between copy when it comes to SEO and CRO? Brian, how much copy do you want on a page from a CRO perspective, or what are you looking at when you're looking at copy on a page?
So the perfect amount, or it depends, but the answer will flow from, again, human visitors to the website. So it's possible that we want actually a really long page. If you think about direct response style sales letter web pages that they tell a really emotional narrative story, and they sort of name this problem, and then they talk through this vision of a solution, and then they deliver the solution, and they're just packed down with testimonials and pull quotes. And sometimes those work really well. That's a thing to test if it possibly makes sense for your offering. And at the same time, typically, most of the time, CRO is about removing things. It's about removing distraction, removing confusing or just cluttered language, removing options that don't actually drive toward any valuable interaction. So most likely, I will approach a page from what can go, what can we get rid of, and can we just throw things out, or can we test removing this and stripping it down to the bare minimum? That's usually the answer.
How do you test to make sure that copy is working or not?
I guess it's a matter of, well, what's the purpose of the page? And if the page is meant to drive conversions or to drive to a step that takes the visitor toward conversion, how is it performing right now? And sometimes we decide that a page doesn't even matter. It's just not worth focusing on, and we look elsewhere. And that copy can just live on in happiness as it is. But if we do identify a page that we really believe we can improve results on, and if the copy is, well, regardless of the length of the copy, I guess, the copy is probably where we want to start, because that's where most ideas are transmitted. So I think of it as, what is the total universe of possible versions of the copy for this page? Let's test variations that are spread out among that universe. And so one of the first things to think about is long form versus short form. Those are very different. So you would expect that if you put them head to head, a winner would emerge. And so you would want to have a long and emotional and detailed version of the page. And you would split test that in something like Google Optimize or VWO against a version of the page that is as pared down as possible, just the information that the visitor needs to complete their task or to move forward. And you'd run those simultaneously, and you would just find out, does one perform better, or does it perhaps not matter in this case?
When we're talking about long form versus short form, the example that I wanted to give here, that it's a black box. Sorry, it's not supposed to be. What it's supposed to be is a video of me scrolling through my best performing blog post on digitalcurrent.com. My best performing blog post it's real long. If you put it in a copy doc, it's 20 some pages. But even though from a CRO perspective, you usually want to avoid copy, and there's as long form copy or overly long copy, because there's usually an inverse relationship between the amount of words on a page and how quickly someone's going to convert on it. I wanted to point out that my super long blog post, it is my most trafficked, and it is the one with the highest session duration, over 5 minutes, actually, of all of my blog posts, because it provides really great information. Also, the point of it is not to convert. It is a top of funnel page. It's a page that's loaded with the right keywords to help people land on digitalcurrent.com, because it's about digital product marketing and coming up with a plan for that. So let's talk about copy length again. Brandon, you from an SEO perspective, why is copy length important to you?
Well, in many ways, it's kind of like that navigation, in the sense that it's getting all of the context to Google. It's showing the bot that, okay, here are the main, here's the main topic, the main keyword, and we really break that down. And not only that, but we talk about every related keyword and every kind of secondary keyword, and really it's thorough. If somebody is looking for that particular answer, they're likely going to find it on this page because of all of the questions that are answered on that page. Or in particular, like this one, that how-to guide, it's giving you all of those steps. So I don't have to find another resource. This one is the answer. And since it's the answer, it ranks highly.
Right. So ultimately, while we would love to leave the webinar giving everybody like a really solid rule for how to use short versus long copy and how to talk about your product and your copy, the answer is sorry, it depends. It depends on your goals, your business goals. It depends on what your data is telling you. And those are what you need to look at in order to decide long versus short copy. We're moving on next to another source of potential conflict between SEO and CRO tactics when we're talking about internal linking, which is related to copy in some ways. Up there at the tippy top, I've got a tiny screenshot from that blog article I just mentioned. What you're seeing is 3 internal links within the body of my blog. Why would we put internal links in the body of a blog? Which is a best practice, by the way, Brandon.
Yeah, it's a great way to send that signal to Google that the page that this page links to, because of the words we use to make that link, that anchor text there that you have circled, it really helps sense the signal. It says that, the page that you are going to is going to define your persona. So Google can see that link, go, I bet that page is about personas. And then the more that you link to it, the more important it appears to Google. You're saying, hey, we are trying to get everybody to go to this page, or this page kind of ties into all of these different things. Therefore, it must be really important. We should continuously crawl it and make sure that we have fully gotten the context of it.
Okay, so internal links, they're really good for Google. Are they good for CRO? What's the purpose of internal linking in CRO, Brian?
Right. So I have concerns, but I can be persuaded here. I guess my concern is about the user experience and where these links go and where users go from there. So it's not necessarily the right answer to say we should take those links out and put a big red button that says give us money. I wouldn't necessarily propose that. But what's really common to find in sites that have just kind of grown up organically, everybody's busy, is you have a lot of pages that are dead ends where there is actually no conversion action to take from that page. So I can definitely be persuaded that somebody coming in via organic search to this very informative blog post should be encouraged to go deeper into the content and further educate themselves and come to trust and appreciate the company behind the content. That totally scans for me. My concern is, will they click one of those links, skim another article, maybe click another internal link, skim a third article, and then just close the tab and leave us? And so this is a great opportunity for a compromise where, if you end up with the occasional CTA interspersed throughout your article, want to know more, want to talk directly to us, reach out, talk to sales, this type of an element. And if you ensure that the dreaded exit intent pop-up or something similar along those lines is an option, then you can have your internal links and convert to.
Right. I thank you for pointing out that you are not convinced if there's the right amount of internal links up there on that page. And it's a really, really good point. You've got to A/B test your way to that. And for the sake of clarity, I want to point out here that we circled these links in red and we pointed out these links at the bottom in the digital current footer with an orange arrow, just because we want to show you that there are actually many different types of internal links. Earlier, we looked at internal links in the navigation bar of a website. At the bottom of this page here, you're looking at internal links on Digital Current's website. That's our footer. The middle example here with all the suitcases, that's a screenshot from an e-com website. We all see these when we shop online. It says, those are your recommendations. It's, hey, you looked at X product, you might also like this one, and this one. And that's a really common tactic in e-com for getting people to stay on your site longer and browse more pages and increase the number of items in your cart, right? So you can see how that plays out here on my blog where I'm trying to generate leads. I've got lots of internal links because I want to show off the expertise of my team, and I want to keep people reading my blog because I believe that my blog is very valuable to my target audience. The e-com approach to that is if I believe that I can get somebody to, do a cross-sell, do an upsell, I'm going to suggest other products to you. So internal linking. Do you guys think we covered like all the potential conflicts and the good and bad between how we look at them from SEO and CRO? Anything to add?
I'll just throw in that one of the most powerful things about experimentation and very carefully choosing your success metric in the case of the e-com example is if you're actually measuring revenue, say revenue per session or per visitor, you can run a split test where you suppress these types of elements, these you may also like links, for one batch of visitors and you show them for the others. And instead of just measuring, well, do people click? Well, how long do they stay after the click? And these kind of indeterminate behaviors, you can just look after 2 weeks, which experience made more money for the business and choose that way.
Yes. So pro tip to marketing leaders, take that data and stand your ground. I know we get pushback a lot from the financial officers in our company and the people looking at the bottom line. Link to more products, sell more products, get more products in front of people. If you've got the data that Brian's talking about, you might actually be able to prove that less is more when it comes to increasing your LTV. Okay, so moving on to gated content. Brandon, I know you love gated content as an SEO, right?
Oh yeah, it's wonderful. The easiest way to really put this into context is Google is in the business of providing answers, as we were talking about before. And when you have gated content, Google is not going to fill out a form and download what you have. So it doesn't know what that content says. It knows you say all of these nice things about what it's going to say and the little snippet or blurb you put to get people to sign or to fill out that form. But it's more of a trust. More verified, then maybe trust you. So that's where the big problem is with SEOs. It's hard to rank highly with gated content if they don't know what the content is.
Exactly. And this is why I depend on Brandon for my recommendations whenever I'm going to make a new landing page or I'm going to do any kind of page on my website. I need to run my idea past Brandon and go, hey, from an SEO perspective, is this going to accomplish what I want it to accomplish? Is this page going to rank? And if there's a lot of gated content, it might not for the reasons that he mentioned. But of course, to me as a marketing director, gated content is super important because we need these pieces in order to get our MQLs and our SQLs. So Brian, how about you? What are the questions that I as a marketing director need to be asking you when I'm going to create these gated content pieces like this lead magnet here for Salesforce?
I suppose if we've actually abandoned all hope of driving organic traffic to a page like this, we're driving paid traffic, right? And if we're doing that, and if you're driving paid traffic anywhere, then you absolutely want to be experimenting and measuring and optimizing that. And this just becomes a CRO playground and Brandon's not allowed to visit and we're just going to experiment all over the place with this kind of thing. So there's a lot of elements on this page that we could be testing. There's the length of the form potentially, although that becomes an operational concern. This is a pretty long form. We would probably get more conversions if we were able to remove some fields. There's the visual element, there's the headline and the content below it. There's a lot we could do here. And so because I assume that we're going to be paying for every visit to this page, we absolutely want to be experimenting on this. That said, there's another aspect of gated content that's worth considering where you do have gated content that people are reaching organically, maybe from a subpage of your site or through a pop-up window that offers it on your site. And I just wanted to share a quick result that we've seen repeated over and over in B2B land. And this is the exit intent modal, full circle here, that pops up and offers you some content. We've actually tested running it as gated versus ungated. And And what's really surprising is that sometimes just about every time I've seen, when you offer the content ungated, as in literally click this link to access the PDF, I don't need your email, I don't need your phone number, I don't want any of that. We've actually seen that significantly increase leads. What happens is people, I would assume, are surprised and maybe kind of delighted by the fact that you're not asking for an email for once. They do click the button, and that's measurable. They access the content, and presumably it's valuable. They come back because they found it valuable, and they're more educated now, and they end up filling out a form anyway. So this is another vector for experimentation on your site. The question being, does all my gated content need to be gated? And is there value in ungating strategically some pieces of content?
Absolutely. Always be testing. Which is what the next slide is. We've got to A/B test. And again, our pro tip to you here is when you're deciding what works and what doesn't on your website, get both of your teams involved, SEO and CRO. An expert like Brian lives A/B testing all day long, and he's going to have some really specific recommendations for what needs to happen. On a high level, what are those? What's a successful A/B test to you, Brian, if you're trying to figure out how to optimize your funnel?
I guess let's start by avoiding failure, not to be bleak, but it's important. So are we measuring something that matters? This is the number one way that I see teams fall down. We've spoken about this earlier, but if you're measuring how many people click a button on your homepage and you're able to show some sort of a significant impact on that behavior, where do you take that? Imagine you're going to present that to an executive at your company. What do you think they're going to ask you about that result? So it can be hard work, depending on your business model, to attribute website behavior to revenue, but that hard work is hard work you have to do. So you fail before you even get out of the gate if you're not measuring something that really matters to the business. And then beyond that, I guess, let every kind of data drive what you decide to test. And so that splits down in a couple of ways, where the qualitative data from customer interviews and polls and surveys, this gives you a sense of what people's concerns are and the emotions around it, which will allow you to craft better experiences to test. Then the quantitative data from Google Analytics just lets you know where on the site should I be focused. Because another way to fail is to run a test on a page that barely has any visitors or barely drives any conversions. You put all the effort into designing and building and launching this test, and then you sit and you watch the results and nothing's happening. And this is very, very common. So that's another way to fall down. So if you know where to focus on your site and you have really good hypotheses about what your visitors are struggling with based on the visitors themselves, not just your own brilliant brain, and you're measuring something that matters, then something great is going to happen, promise.
Agree. I need those A/B tests in my life as a marketing director. But Brandon, when I tell you I want to do some A/B testing on a page, what's your concern for me? What are you going to warn me about?
Well, if we start pulling out content or something like that, then yeah, we could lose rankings. And you never know quite when you'll get it back. Sometimes it totally makes sense to remove some content, and if you can raise that conversion rate, even though you might have less organic traffic, then maybe it works out to a net positive. And you can put that content back in this example to get that ranking back up. But the biggest problem is you don't know when Google will recrawl that page, and it might not even shift it again until the next algorithm update. So you're kind of playing with the unknown there when it comes to an A/B test for SEO.
This is a great point. And actually a key failure mode that I forgot to mention is if you're going to go to all the trouble of testing an experience to measure its performance against your current site experience, be sure that it's an experience you're prepared to implement permanently. And I guess that might sound obvious, but I've seen this so many times where a test runs, there's a resounding winner, and then because reasons, whether political or potentially SEO, because the right people didn't get to see it before it went live, the decision is made that we actually can't go with this experience, even though it won. And that hurts. So
Yikes.
Don't do that. Yeah.
tremendous amount of wasted resources. Okay, so we're going to start to wrap it up here. And what we want to do is give you the tools now that you've identified where there could potentially be conflicts between your SEO and CRO strategies. What do you do when those conflicts arrive? How do you use data to solve your issues? Well, we gave you some of our favorite tools to help you measure the impact of all of these strategies. Sorry, there's no hard and fast answer for how you decide who wins, your SEO team or your CRO team, and whose recommendation wins. Our best advice to you is to use these tools. The CRO tools at the top are going to help you with your A/B testing. Hotjar and Visual Website Optimizer are awesome because they give you quantitative information. They give you really cool heat maps. They show you exactly how users interact with your site. SEO tools there are going to show you how to handle those issues with internal linking, with page speed. And then the tools at the bottom there are some really great, I'm going to jokingly call them smart marketing tools. Google Data Studio is going to help you now that you've got all these tools, and you've probably already got a marketing dashboard in Marketo or Google Analytics or Profitwell, name a marketing metrics dashboard. You're going to want a place to pull all of your data and be able to look at it in its adjustable form so that you can decide what's working and what's not, and what to test, and how to prioritize. And Supermetrics can help you pull in other platforms other than just Google owned into your Google Data Studio reports for marketing. The final thing I'm going to hit you with there is a little bit of a joke. There's no ricematrix.com. Rice Matrix is not a brand, but it is a tool for helping you to prioritize. It stands for, this is a tool for measuring the impact and helping to prioritize when you've got a long list of tasks. So Google that one, Rice Matrix. It'll help you if you've got these conflicts and you're trying to decide, what do I attack first, SEO or CRO? Okay, so let's recap. Brian, tell me what happens when SEO and CRO work in harmony.
So it's this beautiful, it's this glorious cycle where you are getting consistently more visitors while at the same time converting an ever higher percentage of those visitors. And so as both of those numbers grow up at once, if you remember, I guess, high school algebra class, you know, the lines that go up and to the right in a real steep curvy way, that's how you produce a line like that, is those multiplicative effects.
Here's my number one pro tip as a marketing director, and I've said it a bunch of times already, but it bears its own vanilla ice meme. Work across your teams. So what happens a lot in marketing departments is you work really hard for months or for a quarter on increasing your organic traffic. You implement all these SEO best practices. You increase your traffic, but then what happens? You don't necessarily get more sales by increasing your traffic. So then you go, oh, poop, next quarter, it's time for me to really, really focus on my conversion rate and working on CRO. And then you let organic and SEO fall by the wayside. That is optimizing in circles, and that is a path for slower growth and for wasted money. Right? So we want to help you avoid doing those things by making sure that you plan for having SEO and CRO work in harmony. If you've got those internal resources, SEO and CRO, they need to work together. If you're working with an agency who handles one or the other or both, you need to make sure that they're communicating with each other, and you need to make sure that they know your business goals so they can set priorities and decide which of the A/B tests is the most important. And if we're suggesting a less than optimal UX experience, is it really, really going to get us the SEO gains that we want? Vice versa. Here's what's at stake with CRO. This is actually a pretty dramatic example. of what happens to your marketing funnel when you've got 1,000 visitors a month and you increase your conversion rate from 10% to 20%. It's the difference between 1 sale and 8 sales, 800%. That's huge. And most of us would be elated, and we'd all get raises and retire to Necker Island with Richard Branson if we could raise our conversion rate from 10% to 20%. Most of us are looking for much smaller gains. But the point is that even a small gain makes a really big difference. So what if you could 3x your conversion rate? This is absolutely not crazy talk. It can totally happen when you combine SEO and CRO together. So what we want you to do is reach out to us at Digital Current for a CRO audit. Here's what you get when you work with us with your CRO audit. We will give you 8 to 10 immediate improvements that you can make to your site, because we are all about clear, actionable, prioritized goals that level up to your revenue goals. It's all about ROI. This is not just how to make a prettier website or let's test some stuff and see what happens. This is about ROI-centric decisions and how to make the most of both the traffic that you work so hard to get in SEO and then squeeze more juice out of it with CRO. So I'm going to give you my contact information here in a minute. And if you need some help with your CRO and your SEO, reach out to me. That's us at Digital Current. We love you. We wanted to remind you that we're experts at CRO and SEO. We've been doing this for 18 years. We've had over 15,000 clients. We have an A+ rating with the BBB, and we have some awesome results that we would love to get for you. So if you need help with your CRO, give me an email after this webinar is over. I'm going to send you a replay link, and you can send your questions. We're about out of time, but you can send any questions you might have to me, and I'll get them to Brian and Brandon, and we will get back to you with an answer. So we want to thank you very, 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 very much today for joining us. Oh, thanks, Megan. Appreciate you. We want to thank you very much for joining us today. Feel free to get in touch. I am going to switch my screen back so that you can see the other guys. Say bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thanks.
We'll send you a replay link. Send us your questions about CRO and SEO.